Why is God hiding from you? Why is God hiding from me? Why is God hiding from everyone, from all humanity, all people? Who or even what is God to begin with? And what does it even mean that there is a concealment and even then a revelation, and to reveal and to discover God? These are major questions, and we raise them because many people in the world speak about having faith or belief in a God, in a creator, in a higher power. But if we're talking about the concealment and revelation of God, the creator, a higher power, then we're already speaking about something opposite to faith. Why? Because if something is concealed and we do a certain work, some kind of exercise, some kind of practice, some kind of study, some kind of research or experimenting in order to reveal that thing that was once concealed, and then we can also reproduce those results, we can make them testable, that others can take them and test them, we can write them down, what we did in order to reach that revelation, and then others take that and work on it and reveal the same things. So then that becomes something empiric and scientific, which runs contrary to faith, because we're not speaking here about having faith or belief in some higher power, in that we come and reveal that higher power in the afterlife or after we die, but rather here in the wisdom of Kabbalah, which is by definition a method to reveal the Creator, reveal God, reveal this higher power to us people while we're alive in this world. Not in some afterlife, not after we die, but while we're alive here in this world, there is a method by which we can reveal, by which we can attain the higher power, the Creator, God. Kabbalists also call it an upper force, nature. We'll get into that as we come along here, but that's what we're talking about today. And when we're talking about revealing God or revealing the Creator, revealing the higher power, we're also talking about what it means that it is hidden in the first place, why it was hidden in the first place, what is that higher power itself, what is God, who is God, and what is it to reveal God out of its concealment? And even moreover, what does it even mean to reveal its concealment? There's many, many questions here. We're going to explore all those in today's Kabbalah Explained Simply. I'm Markos, and we're going to get into it right after this little opener. So, just as we were twisting our tongues over all these different words that describe God, so let's get that out of the way right at the beginning. As we said, God is also known as many names in the wisdom of Kabbalah. Creator, as you see here, is a very common one. You'll often hear it written as Creator. And what does it mean, Creator? Creator in Hebrew is the word Boreh, as you can see here, and Boreh comes from the connection of two words, come and see, Bo-Ureh, which is very significant because it means a force that we attain and we come to see it, meaning that you don't believe in it until you come and see it. So that's one major reason why the Kabbalists gave the word Creator to this higher entity. But even more so, they also called it nature, as you can see here in this short quote here by Kabbalist HaSulam. Baal HaSulam is the most renowned and greatest Kabbalist of the 20th century, of our era, who wrote many texts, including monumental texts and such as the study of the 10 Sfirot and the writings of and commentaries to the writings of the Ari. And this is in one of his articles. He also wrote many articles for people who are beginners to the wisdom of Kabbalah to learn how to rise, to attain that revelation of the Creator while we're alive in this world, and to situate ourselves properly toward this method and this wisdom. So here's a quote where he describes how Kabbalists equate the word God to the word nature. So we'll just read this. It's from his article, The Peace, to avoid having to use both tongues from now on, one, nature, and two, a supervisor, between which, as I have shown, there is no difference regarding the following of the laws. It is best for us to agree and accept the words of the Kabbalist that Hateva, the nature, has the same numerical value in Hebrew as Elokim, God, 86. Then I will be able to call the laws of God nature's laws, or vice versa. the commandments of God by the name nature's laws. For they are one and the same, and we need not discuss it further. So he's basically saying God and nature are one and the same. In Kabbalah, there is this system called gematria, where the numbers equate from the letters to the same number. You can see here, I've spelled it out for you all. As you can see here, Hateva in Hebrew letters and Elokim, God and nature, they both equal up to 86. And here are just many names that are given to God and what it actually describes. So just to really understand that when we're talking about God, the Creator, we're talking about an upper force, or it's also called upper light, it's also called nature. It's all talking about this quality of bestowal, a desire to bestow, a force of bestowal, this omnipresent force that is just constantly with this intention to bestow contentment upon the created being that it created, which brings us to the other part here, which is us. We belong in this other half. In general, there's more to it than that, but we'll learn about that as we go along. So the Creator created the creation, or created being, it's also called, or the creature. Sometimes we'll hear it referred to as soul. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as us, people, humanity, and nature on the still vegetative, animate, and human levels. That there's 4 levels of this creation, and it's all in order for us people to ultimately come to the revelation of the Creator. The revelation, as we said, when we're talking about the Creator or God, we're talking specifically about this quality of bestowal, this desire to bestow, or an intention to bestow upon our quality, which is what? The opposite quality, as it's written here, quality of reception, a desire to receive. We'll also hear this word desire often referred to as will. If you read our text, you'll see it referred to there as a will to receive often, or a will to bestow on behalf of the Creator. And we are also a force of reception. So in short, the Creator, a quality of bestowal, a force of bestowal, a desire to bestow. The creation that it created, or the created being, is a quality of reception, a will or desire to receive, a force of reception. That's what we're talking about. We've talked about it in many lessons and in many contexts, that every single one of our desires, if we look into ourselves just for a moment, we'll see that at every single moment we're desiring to receive pleasure, we're desiring to enjoy, that is our base nature. We can't get away from that. It's our matter. It's the very matter from which we're created. The Creator created a created being in order to fill it abundantly with delight. And we are in a certain state within the process of attaining that abundance, where we still haven't reached the full level of the attainment of that abundance, but we're in the process towards it. And one of the outcomes of that current process is that our desire is constantly in this state of wanting to move toward a state of pleasure, because pleasure is the source of where the Creator is giving us all those pleasures from. So while we're in this state, we also see it referred to like this, about where we actually are in this whole process, that originally we're in this state of an unconscious adhesion with the Creator, and then we detached from that and started our evolution as we know it here in this world. And through much development and evolution, we're in this process now of regaining that consciousness of the connection we actually are in, but we just lack the consciousness of it, that we have never really left this state of being completely adhered to the Creator in completeness, in wholeness, but we just lost consciousness of it. And the whole time that we've been evolving in our world, going through all this development that we know in our history and what we know of today, it's just a process of regaining consciousness of that state that we were once in, eventually to rise back up the degrees that we came down, and to attain this future final state, which is conscious adhesion of that very state that we were created in, that we exist in, that state of complete adhesion with the Creator, but one of consciousness, one of attaining it out of our own free will, and one where we feel the pleasure of that connection and of that adhesion with the Creator myriad times much more than we have felt it in the beginning. Even though we were completely filled with pleasure and abundance in this first state, when we were initially created like the in connection and adhesion with the Creator, in our original state of being. We're talking about before the Big Bang as we know it, before all of this world, before the earth, before even the universe as we know it, before everything we can perceive in our five senses. There was this state of pure adhesion, where we were completely filled with all the pleasure and delight that the Creator wishes to fill the creation with. But we have no consciousness of it. We weren't really aware of what we were dealing with then. Kabbalists have written about it in many ways. It's like they've called it as being like a candle in a torch, just completely annulled in it. Or you can liken it to an embryo in the mother's womb, that we were all once in the embryo of our mother's womb, but we cannot recall what that feeling was like. It's something that we were one with our mother, completely filled with everything that the mother had to give us, but had no consciousness of that state. We never attained what that actually meant. So there's many ways we can picture it like that, but ultimately that was a state that we're in. We lost consciousness from that state, and this whole process of evolution is us developing back to it. There are many things within this, and the whole of the wisdom of Kabbalah talks about this picture here. We're just saying it in a few words to prepare ourselves to understand this whole idea of why the Creator did this to begin with. Why is the Creator hidden in our lives while we're in this state of gradually regaining consciousness? And also, what can we do about it? Is there any way to accelerate that? And that's what we learn about here in the wisdom of Kabbalah. We're going to go now into an article. It's an article from a very special book which is called Shamati. Shamati is Hebrew for I heard. This book was the notebook of Kabbalist Baruch Shalom Halevi Ashlag, who in short is called Rabash. He was the teacher of Kabbalist Dr. Michael Laitman, who was the founder and main teacher here at B'nai Baruch, Kabbalah Education and Research Institute. And Rabash was also the son and disciple of Kabbalist Yehuda Ashlag, who we mentioned before is the most renowned, the greatest Kabbalist of the 20th century, the Kabbalist upon which we base all of our sources. Rabash too wrote many Kabbalistic texts, many sources that further expand on the inner work of an individual who is attaining the Creator. Also, he expanded on the group work of how we study in groups. Kabbalists for millennia, since the very beginning of their studies, have studied in groups. The very first Kabbalistic group was the one that gathered with Abraham 4,000 years ago. That was the very first Kabbalistic group who acquired the name the People of Israel from their connecting and drawing that force of the Creator, the force of God, the upper force, into their connection, and undergoing a process of having no connection to each other, no connection to the Creator in any kind of conscious way. And through all kinds of application of the method of attaining the Creator that Abraham had attained and passed on to them, they attained that connection, and they became known as the People of Israel. And People of Israel, which is coming also from the words Yashar Kel, two words, Israel, Yashar Kel, meaning straight to God, meaning that the People of Israel also were never a biologically based group, but they were a group of people from ancient Mesopotamia who came together and who studied under Abraham, and through applying that method upon themselves, which was essentially the method of Kabbalah, they acquired that revelation of God, the revelation of the Creator, and they became that first group who rose to these spiritual heights and had that spiritual perception. Since then, many processes have taken place. Eventually, that group lost connection to that spiritual perception and came down to what it is. Why am I mentioning this now? It's because, just doing a little bit of a detour, it's also to show that this is why Kabbalah today is open for really any person. It doesn't matter what background a person is from. If a person feels some kind of desire within themselves where they have an interest in existential questions, in questions about the meaning and purpose of life, in wishing to look beyond the way things appear to them in this world in order to see how are they working at their causal level, at their root level, so that is all a person needs in order to come and study the wisdom of Kabbalah, meaning all a person needs, the only prerequisite for studying the wisdom of Kabbalah is a desire, is an interest that brings one to study the wisdom of Kabbalah. There's nothing other than that that's required. And the example for that is in the group that gathered around Abraham and studied from him and applied it. So that was a little bit of a detour, but we were talking about the book Shamati, which is a major book that we study from here. And Shamati was written by Rabash, but it was written by Rabash as an exact word-for-word transcriptions of what he heard from his teacher, Baal HaSulam, Kabbalist Yehuda Ashlag. That's why it's called Shamati, what I heard. It's what he heard from his teacher. It was actually his notebook, just like any student comes and they have their teacher and the teacher speaks and they write down their notes. And his notebook was special in that he would really exert to get it word by word, to really adhere to what his teacher was passing down to him. And Shamati is a unique text because these texts that we have today in the Wisdom of Kabbalah can be divided into two fundamental types. If we go back to this diagram and we see the two ladders here. So there's this ladder on the left, which is stemming down from that initial state that the Creator created us in full adhesion with Him, to a state where we lost connection of that adhesion with the Creator. And there's texts in the Wisdom of Kabbalah that talk about those very processes of speaking about the concatenation down from that full adhesion with the Creator, from the original state that we were created in, all the way down through all these kinds of processes down to this world, which is a world that we perceive in our five senses, that we sense everything through our five senses, which is the corporeal world as we know it, removed and separate from the spiritual world in our perception. So there's Kabbalistic texts which talk about the concatenation down of spiritual sfirot, partsufim, entities, structures, spiritual worlds, which is all in that spiritual realm. And traditionally the Wisdom of Kabbalah was all about the study of these texts. Texts such as the Book of Zohar, texts such as the study of the 10 Sfirot, even texts such as the Torah, all discuss those kinds of processes, nothing about this world. But texts such as Shamati are some texts that are relevant to our times, because those texts, and also various articles and essays, but specifically Shamati, talk about how a person goes through processes and states in their ascent, in their spiritual ascent from this world up to the spiritual worlds. So it talks about this ladder going back up here, or even more correctly, from the time a person gets a desire here in this world that wishes to connect back with that root from where we initially came from spiritually. So Shamati talks all about the person who is moving toward connection with the Creator from their state in this world. And that's why they're very emotional texts, because they go through the emotions we go through in our states from this world up to the spiritual worlds. And we're going to learn just a very short article. Some of the articles are very short, even just a paragraph long. Other articles in Shamati are quite long, a few pages long. It's all in relation to different times and places that Rabash was hearing his teacher speak. Sometimes it would be at a lesson, other times it would be a talk at a meal or in different events. So we're going to read a short article called Concealment today. It's Shamati article number 174. So you can say that it's by Baal HaSulam, but it's written down from Rabash, from what he heard from Baal HaSulam. Concerning the concealment, which is a correction, had it not been for that, man would have been unable to attain any completeness, since he would not be worthy of attaining the importance of the matter. However, when there is concealment, the thing becomes important to him. Even though one cannot appreciate the importance as it truly is, the concealment grants it merit. To the extent that one senses the concealment, a bedding of importance is formed within him. It is like rungs. He climbs rung by rung until he comes to his designated place. This means that he achieves a certain measure of importance with which he can at least endure through his true importance and sublimity. So, though his true importance and sublimity are immeasurable, but nonetheless a measure that will suffice him to persist. However, concealment in itself is not considered concealment. Concealment is measured by the demand. The greater the demand for something, the more the concealment is evident. And now we can understand the meaning of the whole earth is full of His glory. Although we believe it, the concealment still fills the whole earth. It is written about the future, For I will be unto her a wall of fire round about, and I will be the glory in the midst of her. Fire means concealment, but still glory is in the midst of her, meaning that then the glory will be revealed. This is because then the demand will be so great, even though there will be concealment then, too. And the difference is that at this time there is concealment, but no demand. Hence, this is considered exile. Then, however, although there will be concealment, there will also be demand, and this is what is important, only the demand. There's a lot in this article. It's, as you can see, it's very short, but it's very dense and very complex. And we're not going to get into everything, but we're going to get into discussing a few points here. But before I go into discussing some points, we learned this lesson recently in a daily Kabbalah lesson with Kabbalist Dr. Michael Laitman, who for many, many years has been giving Kabbalah lessons on a daily basis to advanced students. They're really open for everyone, but it's good to get an initial basis and foundation in the fundamental principles and concepts of the wisdom of Kabbalah and what it means to study the wisdom of Kabbalah, first to absorb those individually, to try to piece together what Kabbalah is as opposed to other teachings and situate oneself. And then also after a person gets through that stage to see how they fit within the context of studying with a group. We provide, by the way, a full study framework for being able to go through all the processes you need to go through, a structured study framework at KabU. Anyone who's interested, just click the link in the description and you'll be able to join a structured study framework that takes a person through all the basic concepts and fundamentals of Kabbalah that you need to learn, all the way through to being able to join a study group and what's called a 10. We'll learn more about what a 10 is, but a 10 is fundamentally a small group that you study with, and with that you get all the tools you need to be able to join the daily Kabbalah lesson, if you so wish. But in any case, daily Kabbalah lessons, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Laitman, he's been giving them for many years. We had one just the other day where we learned this article, and he opened it with the following words. We'll just watch a short clip from this, and then we'll keep talking about it a bit.
A short article, but extremely important. Explains to us the reason for our state. So what we need is to attain specifically the forces of concealment, just like in our life. What's the difference between us and animals, still vegetative and animate? Then the speaking degree. The speaking degree, we see what's special about the speaking degree. It arranges clothing for itself. Garments, various external forms on itself. Certain signs, they get tattoos, they wear various hats, they place a lot of different discernments on them. If you're a military person, meaning they arrange for themselves the signs of concealment, and according to this concealment, according to the clothing, we relate to the person. It is known that for women it's a very important thing, for men less so. Nevertheless, new times come, humanity is changing from within, and it also changes its external clothing. And from here we may also learn what is the concealment. The concealment comes from above, that we would discover it, reveal it from below. When I conceal the Creator from my ego, from my will to receive, and I wish to build from the attitude to Him the desire to bestow, the intention to bestow. Then I begin to understand that what the Creator is doing by creating a concealment from above, it's in order for me to allow me to build concealment from below.
All right, so there's a few things there in how Dr. Laitman explained this article, or began to explain it, and got much deeper later on. But the concealment of the Creator comes from above in order for us to build a concealment from below. What does it mean that we build a concealment from below? That what is revealed to us while the Creator is concealed from us? What if we don't perceive this force of bestowal, love, that we have this full connection with this force that connects everyone in pleasant harmony all around the world? You can see what the results of this concealment are in our world today. That each one has an idea in terms of what they think is best to do, what is right, and this connection between people is lacking. A correct, perfect, harmonious, positive connection between people is ultimately lacking. And this is one of the results of the Creator being concealed, that we don't have a common source that is filling the space between everyone, that everyone can feel this common harmony, perfection, that everyone knows exactly what to do and how to act correctly and how to think correctly and behave correctly, but rather everyone does that which is correct in their own eyes, and each one has different upbringings in different places, and this is our world today. That's how our world looks, and it's a world that is in this full concealment of the Creator. And what is being said here, that this concealment, why is it taking place? In order for us to build a concealment from below. What does that mean, to build a concealment from below? So if the Creator is concealed from us, if God is hidden from us, what is revealed to us? Our nature, our ego. That's what's revealed to us. Our ego, which constantly wants to enjoy for self-benefit alone at every single moment. So with the Creator being concealed, what is revealed is that there is this desire to receive, this desire to enjoy within me, within each and every person, which wants to receive pleasure, absorb pleasure into itself. And the egoistic form of receiving pleasure is the intention by which we receive the pleasure. It's one thing that we are a desire to receive pleasure or a desire to enjoy. It's one thing because that is our matter, that's the substance that forms our base nature. But there's this additional intention that we have to receive that pleasure for self-benefit alone, that each and every person hosts from birth, and which grows in our lifetimes, and which has also grown throughout human history to a point where in our era it's overblown. It's reached a point where it's really that we're finding it increasingly difficult to fulfill ourselves, to satiate ourselves, that all throughout history it's a history of ultimately this growing egoistic desire in humanity, to a point where today it's very, very big, and it's one of the reasons why we're having such problems as increasing depression, loneliness, emptiness, anxieties, stresses, mental health problems, and myriad problems that we're having today, specifically because on one hand we're having this material abundance, on the other hand we're finding that our inner desires aren't becoming fulfilled from all of that material abundance. And that is one outcome of us not being able to fill this constantly increasing ego that we host. So when we're building a concealment from below, it means that we're concealing our ego, concealing that very intention to receive for personal benefit alone. And when we conceal that intention, that's what allows us to reveal the Creator's intention, the opposite intention to our very inborn egoistic intention. So by concealing the intention to receive for my personal benefit alone, we can discover that intention to bestow, to love, to give outwardly to others with no thought, with no inclination or consideration for self-benefit. That's ultimately why the Creator is concealed, that we're able to build a concealment on our own behalf, and to do that out of our own efforts, out of our own requests, out of our own ways of trying to align with that very force of the Creator, by trying to place ourselves into that state where the Creator bestows to us. So we wish to bestow like the Creator bestows to us, outwardly towards everyone and back to the Creator. If we learn how to make that shift and do that change and apply that change to ourselves and allow that change to take place in us, which is a purely internal change, something that happens in our internality. So that's what allows us to build this concealment, to conceal our very ego and to attain that very intention of the Creator. And that's what brings us to the revelation of the Creator to his created beings in this world, as we said, is the definition of the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's not just the definition of the wisdom of Kabbalah, but it's the purpose of the entire creation. All humanity is gradually evolving to that. And what's Kabbalah in this process, if all of humanity is ultimately evolving to that? Kabbalah is merely a method that allows us to more quickly, more pleasurably, with more understanding and with more awareness, attain that very revelation and go through the motions of attaining that revelation in a much more aware manner, which also saves us a lot of suffering, a lot of confusion, a lot of pain in the process, because we get a guidebook on how the Creator is relating to us and how our nature works in that process, and what we can do with our nature to apply upon it the same intention as the Creator has toward us, and ultimately come to connect ourselves with that very source force that is constantly working on us in a positive manner, in a harmonious manner, and reveal a harmonious, peaceful, happy existence, one of eternity and wholeness, while we are alive in this world. So that's the reason for the Creator being hidden, for the Creator being concealed, in order for us to apply that to ourselves. There are a few other concepts here. We're only just really touching the surface. So we'll just read a little bit of the beginning of this article again, and we'll touch on a couple of other things here. So going back to the beginning of this article, Shamati number 174, Concealment. So it says, concerning the concealment, which is a correction. In the wisdom of Kabbalah, we talk about corrections. Essentially, a correction is that inversion of our will to receive to a will to bestow. So without the concealment, without having the Creator concealed from us, without shifting from that state of unconscious adhesion with the Creator to a state where we have no perception of the Creator, where the Creator becomes concealed from us, we wouldn't be able to come to really enjoy to the fullest extent that we could possibly enjoy, because the whole purpose of the Creator creating the created being, creating us, was for us to enjoy fully, completely, wholly, in an eternal and perfect manner. And the Creator had to become concealed from us for that to happen. So that's a correction, because without that we wouldn't be able to have any feeling of enjoyment, without that detachment and concealment of the Creator, which is a detachment in our perception only. It's not one that exists on the Creator's behalf. So concerning the concealment, which is a correction, had it not been for that, man would have been unable to attain any completeness. Yeah, we would never be able to attain any completeness. And the key word here is attain. Yes, because we had that completeness in the first state, but we were unconscious of it. It was never attained by us. You can liken it somewhat to a person who was born into a very wealthy family. If they were born into a very wealthy family, they have no appreciation of that wealth as a person who was born into a poor family and who had to work and to attain that wealth that they got with their own efforts, so that they self-made themselves into a wealthy person out of their own efforts and out of their own application of themselves to attain that wealth and become a wealthy person. The person just born into a very wealthy family doesn't feel it in the same way. So it's a similar comparison here, that when we were in that unconscious adhesion with the Creator, we couldn't appreciate the completeness, that perfection, that eternity that we were in, because it didn't come from our own attainment. So concerning the concealment, which is a correction, had it not been for that, man would have been unable to attain any completeness. since he would not be worthy of attaining the importance of the matter. There's another key word here, the importance, that through our efforts that we apply, through having a method by which we can that we can work on, that we can experiment with, that we can research on ourselves to learn and peel away our nature like an onion, bit by bit, going through state after state, working at the level of our thoughts, working with our environment, working with all the means at our disposal to enter this perfect, harmonious, eternal state, which is our future final state, and to place ourselves into that of our own accord, and with the support of those around us and working with others in society, we really get a maximal feeling of life from all of this, everything that we're working with in order to attain that. And we really become worthy of attaining the importance of that connection with the Creator through having that concealment and going through states where we've felt what it means to be in full concealment of the Creator, not having that connection at all, feeling what it means to suffer, and then to come back to that wholeness and that completeness that the Creator has set up for us to attain. However, when there is concealment, the thing becomes important to him. Even though one cannot appreciate the importance as it truly is, the concealment grants it merit. To the extent that one senses the concealment, a bedding of importance is formed within him. There's lots of things here. There's that line that we cannot appreciate the importance as it truly is. Yeah, we can never have a full appreciation of the importance of the connection with the Creator and what the Creator set up for us to attain. But as much as we apply ourselves and work on attaining that importance, and it comes from that bedding of concealment, so that's what allows us to have somewhat of a feeling of it. So everything here, as you can see, depends on a person's inner efforts and the way they work on themselves and use all the tools at their disposal, the method, and all the means that are given to work with, and then we can attain that importance. We'll keep reading a little bit more. It is like rungs. He climbs rung by rung until he comes to his designated place. This means that he achieves a certain measure of importance with which he can at least endure, though his, the Creator's, true importance and sublimity are immeasurable, but nonetheless a measure that will suffice him to persist. Yeah, all the time we're working in increasing the importance of the Creator on our spiritual path. We're always working on trying to see how is that quality of bestowal more and more important than our own quality of reception. And our ego always erases that. It always makes us see that we are important, that self-benefit is important. And that's why we're always trying to place this importance of the Creator as something that we're aspiring to and working towards. I'm just going to go to another clip that Rav Laitman expands on this and talks about it in relation to a concept of clothing. So we'll get into this a bit now. It's also from that same lesson.
The concealment exists intentionally, so we will attain the importance. And to the extent we have the importance, we will begin to build the concealment from our side. Restriction, screen, reflected light, and bestowal. In our lives, we also do it in order to make ourselves something more important in the eyes of the other. This is different form of concealment, but nevertheless, see how it exists, how important it is, what am I getting, which house, car, clothes, how do I present myself toward the other. It determines my entire life. If we look closely at our life, how much we work in order to obtain the correct concealment over ourselves, to present ourselves correctly towards the other, we will see that it's not so simple. We need to invest also in spirituality. in concealment over spirituality, relative to spirituality. And this would be like the clothing that we have, all the signs that we have in corporeality. And from acquiring the forces of concealment, when the Creator becomes more and more important for us, and that's why we need to conceal Him from us, from our ego, from our will to receive. As Baal HaSulam writes, beware of reaching out and touching Him.
Yeah, so one aspect of the wisdom of Kabbalah, which especially in the beginning stages of learning the wisdom of Kabbalah, it's very interesting, is that it reveals the roots or causal forces of the spirituality behind the corporeal reality that we perceive with our five senses here in our world, in our desire to receive. Just like in embroidery, there's a certain picture that we perceive on the embroidered picture part, but behind that, on the other side, there's all these intertwining threads. So it's like the wisdom of Kabbalah shows us what's going on the other side to bring us this picture that we're perceiving here. And so we can also identify all kinds of things on this level of how we perceive things in our world and what's going on in our world, and things that are instinctual, that we just take as a given, that we don't really think about. And the wisdom of Kabbalah explains spiritual roots for those very phenomena. Dr. Laitman talked about some of them in that clip now in relation to what we're talking about. It's also one of the reasons, by the way, this aspect of root and branch, or causal forces and consequential forces in our world, that we even have our very logo, this very logo of B'nai Baruch, where the roots are at the top and the branches are at the bottom. So that reflects this very spiritual ideal, that the spiritual reality has the roots or causal forces, and this world down below, which is in concealment, is where the branches of those roots play out. So it's often explained that these spiritual concepts, how they play out on the branch level of the egoistic reality of our world. And on this matter of concealment, so Dr. Laitman gave the example of how people apply clothing, external signs to themselves, to ourselves, to conceal something. To conceal what? To conceal their nakedness, and for what purpose? To apply an importance in how they present themselves to others. Yeah. So I'm putting on a certain shirt here in order to appear like a certain teacher that's teaching some concepts here. If I didn't have a shirt on, obviously it wouldn't look as important. It'd even look kind of weird. And there's certain codes in our society that we just take instinctually as a given. Dr. Laitman mentioned tattoos, especially in some tribes and things, that they are certain markings that mark certain importance. You can see it in karate with all the different colors of belts that define a different status. He mentioned the example of military, and how in military uniforms there are different badges and medals that define different ranks. So all throughout our lives, we apply clothing to ourselves to make ourselves appear important outwardly in our relationships to others, and that is a branch level occurrence, a consequential occurrence of what's happening at the spiritual level, where we, again, conceal our ego in order to attain the importance of the Creator, in order to attain that importance of bestowal, or in order to make ourselves important to the Creator. Because by concealing our ego, by concealing that very nature that the Creator created in us, by undergoing a process where we restrict that very pleasure that the Creator is giving to us at every single moment, in order to wish to give that pleasure back to the Creator. The Creator appears, we perceive it as the Creator seeing more value from us. That it's like, this person over there, they're not just being led by their instincts to do a whole bunch of things, but they're actually making an act of free choice to rise spiritually and to give something back to the Creator, to give pleasure to the Creator. They want to give pleasure to the Creator. And that is an aspect that it's as if we're presenting our importance back to the Creator. It's a spiritual root, this very action, for why we apply all kinds of different clothings, medals, badges, all kinds of external things to ourselves to make ourselves important to each other in our own relationships here in this world. So at the level of spirituality, it's shown like this, that Dr. Laitman mentioned it there as well, that let's say this is our desire to receive pleasure. And what are these clothes that bring upon the importance of the Creator and that make us important to the Creator? It's applying, as he mentioned here, a restriction, a screen. This is the screen as we show it diagrammatically, and reflected light. So instead of just receiving the light directly from the Creator like this into ourselves, where that light dissipates in our desire to receive, so instead of that process playing out, what we do is we place this restriction and screen upon our desire, and then that allows us to redirect the pleasure that the Creator is giving to us back to the Creator. And by doing so, we enter into this continuous place, this eternal and whole place of the intention to bestow, just like the Creator has towards us. And so the pleasure we feel, let's say that the pleasure we end up feeling here is a pleasure of bestowal, like the Creator. So this is applying, as we said, a restriction, which in the wisdom of Kabbalah is called a tzimtzum. This is in Hebrew. Screen, which in Hebrew is a masach. And the reflected light, not just the direct light that's coming from the Creator, which is here, but we reflect it or return it back to the light. Sometimes we hear it referred to as returning light. Oops. Just to fix that. Oh yeah. So, reflected light, which is or choser. And then the pleasure in bestowing back to the Creator, in that importance that we attain of the Creator, is in the extent to which we can return that light to the Creator, return the pleasure back to the Creator that the Creator wishes to give to us, and not receive it for our own personal benefit. And that pleasure is called what we receive in our spiritual partzuf. It's called what we receive in the toch, or in the interior of our partzuf. It's already getting deeper into Kabbalistic terms, but that's essentially the clothing or the bedding of importance, as it says, that we apply to ourselves in order to attain the importance of the Creator. And until we attain that, we work in what's called applying ourselves to play it out, to act it out, we work with all the means at our disposal, the study of Kabbalistic texts, the work with a Kabbalistic environment, which, as we said, is a supportive environment of others who share this common desire for this common spiritual goal. It's called the Kabbalistic group. We also call it the Kabbalistic 10. So we work with these people, and we also learn these concepts from Kabbalistic teachers, meaning those who have spiritual attainment themselves and who are able to guide students to the same levels of attainment that they have attained themselves, and who apply all their efforts into doing so. So we work with all these means in order to place ourselves in that very mode of just wishing to bestow constantly all the time, wishing to be in that same mode of just loving, bestowing in a positive form of connection outwardly, just like the Creator has towards us. So we try to apply that in our own relations and back to the Creator. And by doing so, we attract those forces to ourselves. We start aligning ourselves in that direction to a point where that process plays out in our very internality, that we undergo a restriction, we apply a screen, we have that reflected light, meaning that we attain that very intention to bestow and love that the Creator has towards us back to the Creator. And in that, we enter that spiritual realm. We enter that revelation of the Creator to His created beings in this world, which, as we say, is the definition of the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's the purpose of the wisdom of Kabbalah, to bring people to that. All people are gradually heading there. One sign of it in our current level of evolution is just how much the ego has grown, and just how much people, on one hand, have material abundance at their fingertips, connection to people all around the world in an instant, able to get so many things through the internet today, and it's just amassing more and more and more, able to get so many material things in the world. It's not hard to get a lot of things that we could never even dream of getting in the past. And together with all this, feeling that our desire is not being fulfilled, we're seeing more and more the limits of egoistic fulfillment. And it'll reach a point where we also undergo this point in our internal spiritual progress in the wisdom of Kabbalah. That point is called the recognition or the awareness of evil, meaning that we perceive the evil of my egoistic desire just wishing to fulfill itself personally for personal benefit, that the evil is that we cannot ever be fulfilled in such a modus operandi, and we just want to, in that state when we really feel that that's a bad state, it's not a state that's worth living and working for. So from that point, we develop this sincere desire or demand, as we also read in the article, which, as it writes there, that only the demand is important. So we come to this demand to want to change the way we receive pleasure so that it's one that's aligned with the way the Creator gives pleasure, so that it's in a way where we wish to receive pleasure by giving pleasure to the Creator, meaning that we receive pleasure in order to give back to the Creator. There's many things in this. Ultimately, the whole of the wisdom of Kabbalah discusses this, but it's just a few things here about why the Creator is hidden, in order for us to be able to attain His revelation, and first and foremost to attain it by building that concealment upon our very egos here in this world to reveal Him. And that whole process is described in the wisdom of Kabbalah. We have a whole structured study method here at KabU that's open for everyone who wishes to join in. Just click on the link to the KabU course there in the description and you'll be able to go there. Also, in just a few moments, you'll be able to join us for a live Q&A. If you have questions, I see that there's questions here in the chat, so we'll be able to get to your questions right after this in a live Q&A session in KabU. You just follow the link in the description or in the chat to the live page, click Zoom, and then you'll be able to get in. And if you're not signed in, so you just go there, sign up for the free trial, go into Zoom, and then you'll be able to join through that. And that's really what we have time for today. So we look forward to seeing you at the live Q&A. See you in future Kabbalah Explained Simply. I've been Markos. This has been great being with you once again, and we'll see you again next time. See you later.